So here's more information relating Nabu to the tradition of the Kadieri. So this is from the Mythology of All Races from Stephen Herbert Langdon. Again, this was the Assyriologist from the early 20th century. He was the curator of the Babylonian section of the museum, or rather the museum of the University of Pennsylvania, and he had replaced Archibald Saishi, whom had been the professor of Assyriology at Oxford, I believe. So here he says on page 158, or actually, we're going to take it back just a little bit. So there's also a legend of Sargon the Ancient, whose mother was a priestess and whose father he knew not. He was born in secrecy, and his mother put him in a wicker basket, sealing it with bitumen. She placed the basket on the Euphrates, which did not engulf it, but bore it to one Aku, an irrigator. Aku lifted him from the basket and reared him as his own son and made him a gardener. Ishtar loved him and he became king. The biblical legend of the birth of Moses and his concealment in an ark of bulrushes, which was placed among flags in the river and found by a daughter of Pharaoh, belongs to the same cycle of miraculous births of men, favored by the gods and sent as divinely appointed servants among men. The transference of the myth of a son of a god who delivered the gods from evil and inaugurated a new era to a king is ancient. Sumerian kings frequently proclaimed themselves to be sons of the virgin goddess and not infrequently assumed the title god and even identified themselves with Tammuz. Nabu, literally the prophet, herald god of writing, whose cult and temple is Zeta, were at Borsippa, 10 miles southwest of Babylon, has a Semitic name. This is a translation of the old Sumerian title Mi, to proclaim, to be wise, or Sa. And remember this. This is a translation of the old Sumerian title Mi, right? Because that relates back to Dilmun, where Ninsakila was known. Ninsakila, the spouse of Nabu, was known as the pure queen, or here they translate the lady of the pure divine powers. But Ninsakila, the spouse of Nabu, in Dilmun, is called Meskalak, which changes the meaning of the name to the Lady of the Pure Me. Okay, so again, Nabu, literally the prophet, herald, god of writing, whose cult and temple is Zeta, where at Borsippa, 10 miles southwest of Babylon, has a Semitic name. This is a translation of the old Sumerian title Mi, to proclaim, to be wise, or Sa. The oldest known titles are and Dubisag, the scribe. He, like Marduk, appears to have been adopted by his city from the pantheon of Eridu, and he owes his prominence in the late period entirely to the political importance of Borsippa. In the old Sumerian pantheon, it was the grand goddess Nadaba, or Nasaba, who was the patroness of letters. Nabu, however, was a divine scribe from the beginning of Sumerian religion, and was specially connected with Dilmun. Like I just said, right? Ninsakila at Dilmun was called Meskalak, which means Lady of the Pure Mies. Okay, so just how Ishtar steals all of the Mies, the divine favors, from all of the gods. So he, like Marduk, or actually, sorry, back down to here. Nabu, however, was a divine scribe from the beginning of Sumerian religion and was especially connected with Dilmun, a land on the eastern coast of the Persian Gulf, made famous in legend by the location of paradise there in a poem to be discussed. His wife was Tashmetu, hearing, mercy, also a Semitic title. That's just one of them. An earlier Sumerian name for her has not been found, and she is described usually as the daughter-in-law of Marduk, father of Nabu, firstborn of Ninurta. Nabu is consistently described as a god of wisdom and letters, the Mumu or creative logos of Enki, bearer of the tablets of fate, and mighty messenger of the gods, without whom no plan is initiated in heaven. His symbol on monuments is a writing desk supported on a table, and the whole stands upon the back of a monster hardly distinguishable from the Mushu of Marduk. That this is the symbol of Nabu is proved by figure 64 in Assyrian seal showing Marduk. Okay. Mason's chisel before Nabu. Yep. as I've mentioned from the book Who is Haram Abif, they identify Nabu with the Mason God explicitly, like fucking 4 or 5 times, call him the Mason God, or the God of the Masons. Right? And it's not surprising that Nabu is the Mason God, especially with just how deeply entrenched he is in these mysteries. So, the stage tower of Azida, which was Nabu's tower, okay, the Azida at Borsippa, was named Iramame Menanke, house of him who controls the 7 decrees of heaven and earth. Okay, so there it is, right? How I've been saying this entire time about Nabu and his connection with the great gods, the Kabiyeri, like these 7 or 8 figures, and sometimes the number varies, but 7 or 8 is probably the most prominent. This is the Egyptian Ogdod, and so on and so forth. So, house of him who controls the 7 decrees of heaven and earth, right? Because in the practice of Mithraism, Mithra is associated with the 8th heaven above the 7 grades of initiation, right? The 7 heavens. The 8th is the actual paradise, or Dilmun, where Mithra resides, right? Mithra, who is associated with Nabu. Mithra is a prominent figure in Zoroastrian sources where he plays the role of the patron of Gavarne, i.e. kingly glory. Mithra played an important role under the late Iranian Achaemenid Empire and continued to grow throughout the Greek Seleucid period, where he was associated with the Greek gods Apollo or Helios or the Babylonian god Nabu. Right? So 7 grades of initiation of Mithraism, the 7 stages of the Azida, or the house of him who controls the 7 decrees of heaven and earth. This is why at Dilmun, right, specifically with Dilmun, the Paradise Land, no less, Inzag is the last of 8 deities who are born. The Kabiyeri, right, or the great gods who decree, or whatever you want to call them. Insak, or Inzag, shall be Lord of Dilmun. This is the last of 8 deities who is born from Enki and Ninhursag. Ninsakila is one of the deities. Here it says, he was born, Insak ends the list in the story. He was born from Zag, but was not associated with Nenzag because the latter is the god of Megan, therefore of no use. Insak became the god of Dilmun, as he was in reality. Thus, he links the story of Enki and Ninhursag to the story of Dilmun. Okay? Which makes perfect sense, because I was looking specifically for the connection to Eshmun, because Eshmun is the 8th, right? And this is from the researches of the origin of the primitive constellations by R. Brown June, same guy who did the notes on the 30 Stars tablet from the Mulepen. So, right here in this list, the snake is made a separate constellation. Ophiuchus Huge, Asclepius, Eshmun, the 8th of the Kabirim who stands upon Scorpios, the 8th sign of the zodiac. Alright, and the heart of the scorpion is Antares. And Antares, in the 30 Stars tablet, the Mulepen, right, is associated with Lisi, Nabu. Right? So Eshmun, Ophiuchus, Scorpio, part of the same fucking symbolism. Lisi, Nabu. Now, Lisi was the spouse of Ninsakila. Ninsakila is the spouse of Insak. Okay? Ninsakila is the spouse of Insak, who comes to be known as Meskalak of Dilmun. Right? Ninsakila is also one of the deities born from Enki, comes to be known as the spouse of Insak of Dilmun, which is why you have Ninsakila listed as the spouse of Lysin, right? I've already mentioned before, and it's well known amongst Syriologists that there was this huge gender mix-up. But even though a casual look in modern day will tell you that Lysin is a female deity, here you have Assyriologists from the early 20th century saying, well, actually, Lysin is a male deity, right? Nesu. Under the last title, she was the wife of her son Nesu, dialected Lisi. Right? Ninsakila, the pure queen. I've read this before, but one more time. The official pantheon gives 41 names for Dingir Ma, among which the scribes indicate 5 as the most important. Ninma, mighty queen. Ninhursag, queen of the earth mountain. Nintur, dialectic center, queen of the womb. Nimea, or Ninusamea, queen who allots the fates. And Ninsakila, the pure queen. Under the last title, she was the wife of her son Nesu, dialectic Lisi, right? Because Lisi and Ninsakila are spouses. But right here, you would think that this is referring to 2 different deities, Lisi and Nabu, which is how I've interpreted it. And I suppose you could. But this is the same being, Lisi Nabu. Right, here's Layson and Acadian Handbook, Douglas B. Miller. Right, you see this strange mix-up that's going on here. A sister of Ashki, daughter of Solpain and Hursag, wife of Ninsakila, who was later misinterpreted as a goddess. Ninsakila, they're saying, was later misinterpreted as a goddess. Therefore, Lyson was later understood to be a god, worshipped in Nadav and Kesh, associated with the star Antares, associated with Nabu, right? So, there's this weird fucking gender mix-up going on here, but ultimately what you end up with, no matter how you look at it, is this mourning mother goddess figure, right? Because that's what it always comes back to, is this mourning mother goddess figure, which Lyson is currently, or Lisi, is currently said to be, by most cursory inspections, right, you would find that they say Lisi is a female, and that she is the Mater Dolorosa of ancient Mesopotamia. Right, that's why there's the Lyson laments, where she laments her son, the dying god, who is referred to as the donkey, that I've showed before. Right, but this is Nabu. And this is why it's all associated with this patch of symbolism, said to be Mercury or the Logos by Hippolytus in reference to, or Pseudo Hippolytus in reference to the Ophite heresies, so called. Right, they consider this to be Logos, along with Hercules. Right, Eshman Milkart, right? Right here, at the crossing of the Milky Way, Antares, one of the names of Antares, being Masu. Right, Masu being the name of the mountain that Gilgamesh has to descend through and across the ocean, where the alehouse Siduri sits on the shores. Right, Mashu, Antares is the name of that mountain that Gilgamesh has to descend through to get to the underworld. To get to Dilmun, right, the paradise,